Day. Call the wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, Grace Sassett, and Switch is conducting things in the show. A presentation of Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in Surrey's got the Nissan Leaf, the electric Nissan Leaf that allows you to drive on past every gas station that you see. And it's starting from just $82 a week. Plus, you get a $500 loyalty rebate. Join the electric revolution. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today has Thatcher Demko and JT Miller versus Jeremy Swayman reignited that Canucks Bruins rivalry. You can vote yes or no at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. Yes, something that reared its head over All-Star Weekend. More on that in a second, because I want to start with Elias Lindholm, who finally has practiced here with the Vancouver Canucks in advance of Tuesday's game against the Carolina Hurricanes, of course, the team that drafted him once upon a time, 5th overall. And Tocchet has him starting on right wing with Elias Patterson centering the line. He is with the two line mates we thought he would be with, Patterson and Mikheyev, but starting on right wing. One would suspect he's going to take his strong side face-off draws. He is a good face-off man. And then on the power play, our friends in Calgary, Ryan Pinder and that crew from Afterburner, tell me that he's played all over on the power play, but mostly as a net front guy. So no real surprises there. Perhaps the surprise for the Canucks with the power play is Besser, Miller, Patterson across with Quinn Hughes at the back.
Yeah,
you were surprised by that.
I'm surprised by that because I just love the Miller blowing the zone and running downhill into that shot. And again, we'll see, because the other report that we heard from practice was that there was a lot of movement of the power play. So maybe that's the starting spot, but then once they come out of the blocks, they move around. But I don't want to lose that huge setup of Miller skating downhill into the net. I thought that just worked like gangbusters.
Yeah. All-Star Weekend and the poll question. If you missed it, and a lot of people sort of check out of All-Star Weekend, the reviews on this one is better than most.
It's the best I can remember in some time.
Of course, in some ways, really had nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
After the last couple of years. I can't say I saw much of the games. I did see most of the skills competition and the players getting to choose what goaltender they faced on the one-on-one side of things. JT Miller chose Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins, but with the line, he's the only goalie I can score on, suggesting he had previous success or scored a goal against Jeremy Swayman.
I think it's been deduced that in his career, he's really only got one breakaway goal, and it's against Swayman. I think that's the background.
And then Jeremy Swayman, video of him hugging his fellow goaltenders as they left the ice and walked through the dressing room. And Thatcher Demko doesn't even look at him, just stares straight ahead and walks by, leaving Swayman hanging for the hug. And look, they're goaltenders. They're a little bit weird. It may have been a bit. It also might just be Thatcher Demko just not engaging. We've come to know this about Thatcher Demko.
Yeah.
He's not about the fringe ancillary stuff.
He's not the life of the party.
No. And that left Bruins fans sore. You left him hanging on the hug to the point where Jacob Lauko, Bruins forward, quote tweeted one of the Bruins fans saying Demko is rude, no hugs with Sway. Lauko says, tweets, more hugs for us. The Canucks are in Boston on Thursday.
Oh, are they now?
They sure are, Blake. Once upon a time, they played a Stanley Cup final. You have to be quite old to remember it.
This is game 24.
It's game 36, I believe. And in fact, it's the first of two with the Bruins this month. They are here on February 24th. And Blake, they get the Toronto Maple Leafs treatment. It's a 4:00 puck drop at Rogers Arena on Saturday, February 24th. I voted no on the poll, but I'm sure hoping yes. I think we need something to happen on the ice, and preferably Thursday, so there's some carryover for a couple weeks from Saturday.
Yeah, that's right.
But it was a very fun rivalry, and really, I know, and we'll talk to others about this. I know there's a school of thought, Boston and the Bruins really haven't considered Vancouver since winning the Stanley Cup here at Rogers Arena in 2011. But there was the game with Marchand mock pantomiming, lifting the cup and kissing the ring in Vancouver.
Yeah.
That certainly stirred it up a couple years
Yeah, he hadn't forgotten it at that point. And as long as he is there, and he's the only one of consequence that is there.
I think he's the only one, period.
Yeah. Then I think that in a moment like that, like a gesticulation or something from Brad Marchand is always possible.
Mm-hmm.
It is. He's matured somewhat, but not fully. He's still not fully. He's still
and let's face it, no matter how much he matures, he will always be regarded as the younger guy on that 2011 Bruins
team. But he can't help himself but be the heel.
Yes.
Like he is drawn to it like moth to light. Mm-hmm. So him doing something stupid, maybe he's looked ahead on the schedule, realizing that he's got 2 against the Canucks, and maybe he's
and look, I've long said, first of all, Brad Marchand, terrific hockey player. You can't take that away from him.
For sure.
And we have long said on this show, you need heels, you need villains. There are so many players in the NHL that just want to be bland, just want to be beige, just want to be milkwood toast. He steps into the role voluntarily. Sure. He plays it with aplomb. And I would much rather have the pantomiming heel Brad Marchand than the guy who's low bridging Sammy Salo and maybe ending a career on the ice.
Yeah, if it's just pantomiming Stanley Cup lift, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The low bridges we can do with that.
And of course, I mean, I was going to say lost, but certainly not lost from this market because we're not accustomed. The Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins enter the unofficial second half of the league schedule as the 2 best teams in the National Hockey League at 71 points, 4 points better than the Colorado Avalanche, 724 winning percentage. That's absolutely matched. I shouldn't say that, but 724 matched through 3 digits. Canucks 33-11-5, the Bruins 31-9-9. I cannot believe we are here. And mostly from a Vancouver Canucks standpoint, because of course the Bruins had a historic year last year and then wound up losing in the first round.
And that's always the warning here. What you do in the regular season doesn't guarantee you anything. The 2012 Vancouver Canucks would like a word.
Mm-hmm.
But I do love the fact that we're down to 30. I hadn't done the math yet recently on how many games are left. 33 sounds doable.
Yep.
Like we've bitten off a big chunk of it here at 49 games.
Game 50 in Carolina Tuesday.
So like it's not home stretch. We're not using that terminology just yet.
Nope.
But I think as soon as that calendar turns to March, we can start to use that a little bit. And the playoffs are not too far away.
Well, and we've heard this before. We've said this before this year. This is a good test for the Vancouver Canucks. This 5-game road trip, which starts in Raleigh on Tuesday, heads to Boston on Thursday. Then weekend morning starts, everybody. 10 a.m. in Detroit on Saturday, 10:30 to get out of the way of Super Bowl in Washington on Sunday. Now, Carolina, one of the better teams in the National Hockey League, and after a slow start to the season, they have really kicked it into gear since Christmas. Boston, we know what's there. Detroit is currently holding one of the 2 Eastern Conference wildcard spots, and in fact, the last playoff spot in the East. They're in a Donnybrook with the Toronto Maple Leafs and Tampa Bay Lightning, those 3 squads fighting amongst the teams in the Atlantic Division to stay out of the wild card and play in the 2-3 matchup there. And then Blake, Washington, look, if it doesn't start happening soon for the Capitals, then it's not happening. So they're that quote-unquote desperate team. They're 7 points back of Detroit. They do have games in hand against most of the teams they're chasing in the wild card race. And they have 4 teams to jump to get into that final wild card spot in the East. So you're going to face a couple of well, one really desperate team, one team that doesn't have a ton of margin for error in its final 32 games. Detroit's at 50 already. Before you get, let's face it, a palate cleanser against Chicago next week.
And the Detroit game is much like the Boston game, the first of two in the month, first of two in 2 weeks. So a series versus the Wings, which, I mean, if the Canucks take care of them in both, I mean, it puts a big hit on their playoff aspirations. So
yeah, Detroit's here next Thursday as the Canucks start an itty-bitty homestand before we're on back out on the road.
8 of 10, as we've talked about, and it's are out on the road, and it's going to be a tough test. But really, from there on in, a lot of home cooking. A 9-game homestand is not too far away here for the Vancouver Canucks. So last bit of schedule adversity is right here in the month of February. It really is the last bit of schedule of adversity. So we'll see how they withstand it.
Want to get to something from All-Star Weekend that may well be a thing outside of All-Star Weekend. But Rick Tocchet, of course, one of the All-Star coaches. And as we know, all the Canucks were on the same All-Star team, with the exception of Elias Lindholm. He played on one of the other. He did not play on Team Hughes. Well, one of the players on Team Hughes was Frank Vatrano, winger with the Anaheim Ducks, who a first-time All-Star, let's face it, a guy with a, wasn't exactly a first-round pick, a ballyhooed prospect or anything like that.
But loved wherever he went. He's a former Bruin,
built
by the way.
himself into an NHL player, and a damn good one now.
Yeah.
At age 29, he's got 22 goals in 50 games, 36 points. 29 years old, under contract this year and next at $3.65 million. There has been some talk about him potentially as a trade target. Now, he does have the year left of term, but, Anaheim and Pat Verbeek have to gauge whether they think they're going to be competitive next year. And, of course, they may just hang on to him and move him next year if they can't re-sign him. Who knows? Understand he's quite liked in that room. But he played a fair bit with Elias Patterson with Vancouver Canucks in the All-Star. Look, we get it. It is a totally different format. It does not replicate an NHL game. But with Ilya Mikheyev struggling so mightily, no goals in 17 games here, is it possible the Canucks could look at further bolstering their top six with a guy like Frank Vatrano, who's, let's face it, I think got a pugnacity that Rick Tocchet would take a shine to.
Had a really nice playoff run with the Rangers in 2022. 5 goals.
Boy, he's bounced around a lot. How many teams do you play for? Do you have it there in front of you?
Bruins, Panthers, Rangers, and now Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
But 13 points in 20 playoff games. He's a bit of a fire hydrant. Like, he's not big. He's only 5'11" listed, but he's not light. And so I don't think he gets pushed around much in the playoffs. I like that. I wonder if you're going to go down hypothetical boulevard here. Do you one-stop shop and say Ilya Lyubushkin is defensive depth and just make one larger trade and just be done with it?
Yeah.
Just be done.
Lyubushkin, a rental, a UFA to be a right shot defenseman and a bigger, stiffer guy as well. In fact, was a trade deadline acquisition last year.
Yeah.
With the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, cap space, of course, is a thing for the Canucks. And to be fair, Jim Rutherford on Toronto radio last week talked about how they're going to sit back, be patient, see what market prices are. Talked more along the lines of March 8th. That's a potential acquisition date. That's NHL trade deadline, as opposed to coming out here and making another big early move. But they're all in. And as we've talked about for the better part of, I guess, a month now, if you're all in, you're all in.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think at minimum, you're looking at depth acquisitions for the Vancouver Canucks. I think ideally one forward, one defenseman. This would be a bigger move. That would probably require some salary going back the other way. You wonder where they are on Mikheyev. Now, I personally am not buying the Mikheyev talk for a number of reasons. He's still a fast player on a team that isn't, the speediest in the league.
You saw the speed data that got released last week. The guys that average the most 20 mile an hour bursts, not in the top 100.
Really?
Like, he just doesn't use his speed anymore.
Yeah. Anyways, he's got 2 more years left. He was specifically sought out by this management group. He's still a reputable defensive player now, and I still think he's able to play Rick Tocchet style of hockey. And as we know, that's exacting. And coach wants specifics in terms of what he gets from his wingers, particularly his forecheckers. So I'm still not necessarily buying it, but we got a month to go here before a trade deadline. If it continues not to work out for Ilya Mikheyev, particularly if you're playing beside players the likes of Patterson and Lindholm, then you may get into a scenario much like Andrei Kuzmenko, where it's just untenable.
It's a funny funk that he's in, because get this, Matt, last year on a torn up knee, 46 games, 13 goals, 28 points. This year with the repaired knee, 45 games, 10 goals, 3 fewer, 23 points, 5 fewer points. He was better last year on an imperfect knee. So,
and the other question here is Nils Höglander going to progress enough whereby he takes that duty? And he is a top 6 winger, and Ilya Mikheyev is a bottom 6 winger for the Vancouver Canucks. Tocchet had said recently he wants Mikheyev playing more like Höglander. That is kind of a distant early warning shot, I would think, of the move that they are considering with Höglander, who, of course, has earned the coach's trust more than ever.
And here's the thing,
mention that.
And Höglander, he's still going to be an imperfect defensive player.
Right.
Well, there's 2 Selke nominees beside
one
him.
nominee, one guy's gotten
Presumptive,
votes.
yes.
Yeah, one guy's gotten votes in the past. Patterson's gotten votes. Lindholm has been a finalist.
But, like, if you're going to insulate doesn't that sound perfect for
perfect.
Nils Höglander?
No, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Elliot Friedman saying on his podcast that things are picking up around Chris Tanev. We had the Chris Tanev discussion on Friday with the second-round pick and a prospect being the asking price. Up to 10 teams involved on Tanev. Friedman cites the Toronto Maple Leafs, and as mentioned, Toronto is in a dogfight here. They are holding on to the first wildcard spot in the East. Percentage points better than the Detroit Red Wings, who are in the second wildcard spot. And in fact, the Leafs have fallen from out of that Atlantic Division wildcard spot with the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are up to 59 points and who today welcomed back 4 different players from injury. Chernak, Tanner Jeannot, consequential players. Now, their most consequential player, the guy who's leading the National Hockey League in scoring at the All-Star break, Nikita Kucherov. Did you see his act at skills competition? Embarrassing.
I mean,
honestly, he was so off-putting. He made me hate the event, and the event was actually better than most of these skills competitions, but I couldn't get over the fact just how miserable he looked. How little effort was involved. I didn't even find the trolling of the fans amusing. I think he was out to sabotage the thing. Shame on him. You need buy-in for these events, and this guy wasn't buying in whatsoever. Next year, they've got to figure out which of these guys actually want to participate, put a smile on your face, and join in the fun.
But you run the risk here, and it's lower E embarrassing for lowercase e for me. The minute you start to give the guys the get out of jail free card for the skills competition, however, you get what we have had in recent years in the home run contest and in the slam dunk contest. Sorry, who's taking part in the slam dunk contest? Don't care. I'm sure the guy's got great hops as the 11th choice off the bench for the Boston Celtics, but I don't want to watch that guy.
Are you saying you have a problem with D Brown and how he would pump up his sneakers?
No, see, that was showmanship. That was but at least that's Nikita Kucherov participating. If he wants to stain his legacy by operating like that, then that's his choice. But you can't go, oh, Nikita doesn't want to do it, so here's Frank Vatrano. That's not, you can't do that. You can't. So
honestly, I know people are saying it was better. I still thought it was. Some of those events just aren't particularly pleasing aesthetically, and particularly so when contestant 8 comes up.
Well, the passing
The
one,
passing one is horrible. They
And-
just got to scuttle that one.
and there's no
Less is
intensity.
more.
Patterson did that, and he almost won that, didn't he? Or did he win? He did win it, I think. He did it in like a Barca lounger. Like there was zero urgency to his game. He's such a good passer that he didn't need to look frantic in doing it. But as a result, it loses its eye pleasingness because he's so relaxed.
That's it. If it's not happening at speed, if it's happening as relaxed as it was, and don't even get me started on stickhead. Like, I mean,
I didn't mind that one as much, but
when it's done at sort of half-ass speed, and a lot of them.
All that being said, though, Matt, and I spent the entire weekend in an arena.
Mm-hmm.
I should have just brought a sleeping bag to the South Surrey Community Center.
We've done a show from there way back when, if I'm not
really,
mistaken.
I don't remember.
Oh, maybe you were away in the summer.
I talked to a lot of hockey parents, and people kept on saying to me, "Hey, what'd you think of the All-Star? I kind of watched it. I liked it." So anecdotally, at the very least, it did play well. It did play much better. Now it's a sliding scale, and it's not going to contend for the actual excitement of a true NHL game, especially the way the Canucks are playing this year. But on the scale, I think people thought it was a step forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there was this sad news to report from Rogers Arena, where the Canucks' beloved pup, Rip, a yellow lab, had to be euthanized, just 18 months old.
Yeah, sad.
Canucks tweeted, "Is with a heavy heart that we share the news of Rip's sudden passing late last week. You and your legacy will not be forgotten." Of course, lots of teams now have team dogs, and the Canucks jumped on this train, and it was in association with BC Guide Dogs, and so Rip featured in a bunch of the social media videos the Canucks have been doing over his 18 months. This is CEO Bill Thornton of BC Guide Dogs, who said to CTV News, "Unfortunately, we do have that dreadful moment once in a while when we actually lose a puppy, and we have, in this case, apparently Thursday morning, Rip was not feeling well, did not want to eat his food, did not want to get up. He was taken to a clinic. Vets discovered fluid in his abdomen, decided he needed surgery. And then when they began the surgery, they found just a multitude of things that weren't right, and they felt that he would probably not survive. I guess they discovered things before the surgery and made the recommendation to euthanize Thornton. We always try and put the welfare of the dog first, and we had to reluctantly make the terrible decision that we would have to let him go." So, you know how pets, especially cute yellow labs, burrow into the hearts.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm sure there's some long faces there at Rogers Arena and amongst Canucks fans who were fans of Rip over this 18 months on their social media channels. So I suspect a new dog is coming.
An adoption, perhaps, in the process.
Yeah, especially given that you have the connection with BC Guide Dogs. Okay, let's get into today's show and today's menu, which is brought to you by Seagram's VO. Originally introduced in the early 1900s, Seagram's VO, designed as a wedding gift from Joseph E. Seagram for his son. Barrels set aside in the warehouse and specifically marked VO, the family's very own whiskey. Seagram's VO Select Canadian Whiskey, artfully blended and impeccably crafted. Make it your very own. We're going to talk to J-Pat here on a number of topics. We'll get to some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter. Vanni Sartini will join us, head coach of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, because they have a match Wednesday night at Starlight Stadium in Langford.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, right around zero, if not below, against the Mexican side.
Hey, that worked for Canada.
Could be quite a scene.
The last time that happened, Canada versus Mexico,
that's right.
Commonwealth, it worked.
Is that when we were jumping in snowbanks?
Yes. Yeah. We're like a hot day.
Also, lots to talk about later in the program. The BC Lions are a week away from CFL free agency here with a couple of big stars still unsigned. And Vancouver, BC Place. We know our FIFA World Cup hosting schedule for 2026, and it involves a lot of Canada, and it could involve like pretty much all of Canada's matches, save one, depending on how far the Maple Leafs can get in the 2026 World Cup.
Should we get to our best bets?
Yes.
Presentation
indeed.
of Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino. Matt, what do you like?
Well, I'm probably going to go with the Super Bowl prop all week here.
Okay.
Just so you're on notice. I may pick the Caps game tomorrow, but I think Kansas City is going to want to put the game in Patrick Mahomes' hands. It's tough to run against San Francisco. That defense, those fantastic linebackers, good front as well. So I'm going under 66.5 rushing yards for Kansas City running back Isaiah Pacheco.
I'm going to go a bit of a parlay for the Whitecaps and Tigres.
Oh, wow.
You can choose the halftime and full-time results. So I'm going to say the Tigres, because they're in form at middle of their season, they get an early goal or an early lead. They lead at halftime. But the full-time result is a tie.
Oh, wow.
I picture a 1-0 halftime lead for Tigres and a 1-1 final.
Because it's just so bloody cold.
Yeah, not a lot can be accomplished.
In the 80th minute, they're sitting there going, just run the clock. We don't care about the result. I'm so bloody cold.
So pretty reasonable storyline. Pays out at $12.50. So it's pretty good value, I think.
Right.
Against Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino featuring custom props and parlays you won't find anywhere else. And speaking directly to a Vancouver sports fan. Plus, best-in-class casino with thousands of games and live dealers. Sports Interaction, bet local, must be 19 years of age, and please play responsibly. You can see the code there. You get 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price.
Jeff Patterson is next. Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great.
My family's very own whiskey, barrel-aged and set apart, marked with VO, artfully blended, impeccably crafted, as a wedding gift to my son, for the bride and groom. And now, over a century later, from our very own family to yours, a legacy rooted in whiskey. Seagram's VO, growing deeper, reaching out, raising a glass to your legacy. Seagram's VO, make it your very own.
Hey, gang, if you're finding yourself a little directionless without purpose on a game night, may I recommend Greta. It's a great spot to catch the game throughout the season. They're at 50 West Cordova, so you're on foot. You're just walking to and from the game. It's a lot of fun. It's a go-to spot for food, drink specials, and fun before and after the game. They do have specials every day. They've got all-day happy hour on Wednesdays, and they've got all those arcade games to keep you busy as well. So make it a fun game night at 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar and Grill. Visit them at gretabar.com.
Joined now by Rink-Wide Vancouver's Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, who is still on vacation, but made it to U2 in Las Vegas. We're very pleased about that, Jeff, and can't wait to see you back here in Vancouver. We'll get to All-Star Weekend in a second, but I want to start with Lindholm because we see him practice on the right wing with Elias Patterson, which I guess I was a little surprised there. I thought they would slot Lindholm into the center spot, but you tell me, how do you see these two working out?
Yeah, and I watched Rick Tocchet's post-practice interview from Carolina, and I thought he was, again, very instructive in the way that he is going about his business here. I wonder if it's easier to get a guy to assimilate to a new team on the wing a little bit, but he also talked about the versatility and the fact that he's situational, the righty-lefty thing. So I think you'll see Elias Lindholm take some face-offs. I think that there are parts of the game if they want to, not cheating for offense, but if they find themselves down in the game, perhaps there's ways that you can amp up Elias Patterson to get that line going and maybe ask Elias Lindholm to take on a few more defensive responsibilities along the way. So I think there's going to be a learning process here. Now, Lindholm's been traded before, so I think that's going to help him. And it just the way it turns out, obviously broke into the league in Carolina as a high pick of the Hurricanes back in 2013, so I don't know if there's still a chip, although I saw our buddy T-Mart post the video over the weekend of Elias Lindholm going back into Carolina with the trying to spoil the party with their post-game celebration and all that kind of. So maybe he does still have a chip on his shoulder as he goes back to Raleigh. Whatever the case, he's a veteran now. He's been around. I think that him sort of figuring out and finding his way shouldn't be an issue. And you can't ask for much of a better landing spot than playing alongside your countryman and one of the best players in the National Hockey League. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a work in progress, obviously, but I think you lean into the fact that he's a veteran guy that's been around. He's versatile. He's flexible in the term, in all the things that he can do. I'm really curious to see how do they integrate him on the penalty kill, and does that happen right away? Because this guy is a 55% faceoff guy. He's logged big minutes on the penalty kill in Calgary, and the Canucks penalty kill has been getting better as the season's gone along, but I don't think anybody would tell you that it's a finished product yet. So I wonder how often he'll kill penalties for the Canucks and how quickly that's going to start.
What'd you make of Talkett's competition? Your quote about position. I mean, they didn't add a body. I would fully agree with him if they added a body and there was just more bodies around. But where do you see the competition?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of caught me a little bit as well. I feel like every time I'm on with you guys, we talk about Ilya Mikheyev, and they have to get him going. And if it doesn't happen for him, I wonder how long they can be patient here. I thought it was interesting that Phil DiGiuseppe's on the road trip. He's skating, although Tocchet said he wasn't committing to playing him on this road trip. But we can't get to a world where Phil DiGiuseppe is back in the top six of the Vancouver Canucks. And so, I hope that Nils Höglander would have an inside track ahead of DiGiuseppe if they get to that point with Mikheyev. But first things first, I want Mikheyev to work. It feels like Miller and Besser and Pius Suter had something good going before the break, and so it looks like they're going to continue on here out of the break. Again, at the outset of the season, I didn't envision Pius Suter being a top six forward for the Canucks, but Kuzmenko didn't work. He's not here anymore. DiGiuseppe, we always kind of thought was a short-term project, and a guy that, look, he earned his spot out of camp. Like, I had no issues coming out of training camp, but we always said, like, long-term, there has to be a better option. Elias Lindholm certainly would fit the bill there. So, I mean, as far as the competition goes, I guess it's just the trickle down. But you're right. To me, the competition more feels like if Phil DiGiuseppe does get clearance here and knocks on the door, who comes out of the lineup to make room for him? And we've asked that question in the past. And again, I want to believe that a guy like Nils Höglander with his 14 goals has moved beyond being one of those candidates. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case, but we'll cross that bridge, I guess, when we get to it, because Tocchet was pretty clear that, it wasn't going to happen here in the first game or even the first couple of games. Maybe by the end of the road trip, we shall see. But look, right from the outset, the pre-season practice out at UBC, when Rick Tocchet talked about defense by committee, I think there's an element of forward by committee as well with this Vancouver Canucks Hockey Club, and I think we'll continue to see that. And really, with 33 games to go, to me, it's all about, obviously you're trying to win them, but you also want to know what you've got. You want to maximize and optimize so that you feel you've got the best lineup possible once the playoffs roll around.
When we say first things first, I was thinking about this over the course of the weekend, fellas. 17 games here without a goal for Ilya Mikheyev. This line has the makings of a superior defensive line. I think we can all agree, right? I mean, Lindholm has been a Selke Trophy finalist. Elias is Patterson. I guess I have to specify now, has earned Selke votes in the past, and we know that Mikheyev, especially when he came over, was known for his defensive acumen and his speed. Is it possible that Tocchet just looks at it and goes, "Okay, Mikheyev can be a black hole offensively, or doesn't need to be a huge producer offensively. We'll get our goals from the two Eliases plus the top line and the power play, and Mikheyev just makes sure that line is superior defensively, and we've got the makings of a trio I can keep together." Is that a world either of you can see?
It feels like a risk to me. Again, you're going to see good teams here over the final 33, and then obviously you're going to see good teams in the playoffs. I can't imagine that you can just kind of throw your hands in the air and say, hey, one of our top six guys doesn't need to score, isn't going to score, and we're going to be fine with that. This is a guy that's been a 20-goal scorer in, 54 games the one year, the 21 goals in 54 games in Toronto, and, got to double digits here relatively quickly. Like, I'm not sure, and I've watched this game night in, night out. Like, it's just kind of faded away quietly. That player is still there, and you heard Tocchet just before the break talking about, wanting Mikheyev to play a little more like Höglander, just in terms of ramping up the aggression. He's never, I'm not talking about fighting, but I'm just getting on the forecheck, hound the puck, force turnovers. He's a big guy. Like, use your size effectively there. If you do all those things, then you don't have to be the highest scorer of that trio by any means. But I don't think you can just say, hey, we don't need any contributions from a guy that got to 10 goals relatively quickly after so much time off last year. So I hope that he just settles in. It's going to be interesting to see if he's impacted in any way by his buddy and his countrymen being sent to Calgary in that trade. But whatever the case, like, he's just been way too quiet for far too long now. They need Ilya Mikheyev back and pulling on the rope in the right direction here.
Well, then that brings me to Frank Vatrano. As Blake looks at me curiously, his name has been out there. He's on 3.6 for this year and next. He's got 22 goals in 50 games. And he played with Patterson at the All-Star Game by the design of Rick Tocchet. Do you think Tocchet was trying to see something there, Jeff? And could you see them going for another
for reason?
Could you see them going to another reasonably sized fish out here on the trade market before March 8th?
Oh, I think so. I mean, if you can make the dollars make sense, and that becomes the issue here. At some point, there is a salary cap in place, and they've been up against it all season long. And so, they save a little bit on this latest transaction, but not enough to go get Vatrano necessarily. But we've heard Rutherford talk about being all in, and we've seen how aggressive he's been over his career. And Alvin clearly cut from that same cloth now. So, I think I can see them absolutely knocking on doors here and trying to make some things happen. Whether they ultimately are able to pull another rabbit out of the hat, we'll see. But I mean, if you could bring in a guy that has been a goal scorer on a bad Anaheim team this year, I think that would be a pretty nice fit for this hockey club. So, I know Tocchet talked at length yesterday about, just how sort of overwhelmed he is with the depth that he's got down the middle now. I do think that their center ice position, and again, I'll include Lindholm in that conversation, even if he lines up over on the wing, sort of the way that Miller and Patterson, shared center ice duties when they were lotto lining it. So they've got the middle set up, but one more scoring winger, absolutely, I think would fit the bill here. But that may be too much to ask. But I do think that they will sort of go to the ends of the earth to try to make something happen here. Ultimately, we'll just see if they've got the resources to pull the trigger.
Do you think the Canuck All-Stars got anything out of the experience? It's, Petey's not the most emotive guy anyway, so it's hard to read anything into his actions. JT Miller seemed to have some fun. And I think Quinn Hughes took the skills competition with a grain of salt and sort of, had as much fun as we can read on Quinn Hughes' face as well. What did you think?
Yeah, I'll be honest that I didn't see a lot of it. In fact, the only parts of the game that I saw were at like 20,000 feet as we flew quickly from Phoenix to Vegas, and I watched some of the All-Star Game on the airline app. So, All-Star is what All-Star is. I caught up some highlights and whatnot. Brock Besser got bamboozled by the commercial break there I saw in the draft where he thought he was joining his teammates, and then they had to wait a few minutes. And look, the draft, I think, went, for the most part, it looked like it went off without a hitch. I don't know that I needed the players in skates just kind of skating over to grab their jerseys and then go sit on a bench. I probably could have done without that part. But skills competition, it looked like there was a fair bit of intrigue. And I saw mostly glowing reviews online in the parts that I saw. And I watched it here on ESPN in the States, which was a little different than the broadcasts that we're used to seeing north of the border. So took that for what it was worth. And then as I was sort of in transit on Saturday, so I didn't see the games. But look, I think, yes, I think all of those players and the fact that they were there together and they recognized that, as Rick Tocchet said, like, this is about the crest. Like, it was well represented. It was better represented than any other team in the National Hockey League. Like, there has to be some pride there. And they're there because of the seasons that they're having. So I hope the guys embraced it and enjoyed their downtime. And I thought it was interesting to hear Tocchet say he asked his All-Stars if they wanted the night off on Sunday, and he said no to a man. They all wanted to be back there at that first practice for the Vancouver Canucks. Like, I think that indicates that these guys are anxious to get this going again with 33 before the playoffs start.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
That is absolutely a great sign. They're not about that all-star action. They're about the regular season and what's left. So you saw JT Miller picked Jeremy Swayman as the goalie you wanted to face. You saw Thatcher Demko wasn't hugging Jeremy Swayman. It's led to our poll question, Jeff. Demko and Miller versus Swayman. Is this reigniting Canucks Bruins in advance of their Thursday game? Is the rivalry back, J-Pat?
I can't believe you guys are going down this road, but it feels to me you need two sides to have a rivalry, right? And as much as people in Vancouver still cling to 2011, like the Bruins have so moved past that. I don't know if there's a person in Boston that's thought about Vancouver since 2011. They've got back to 2 finals. They had one of the all-time great regular seasons. They've had Hall of Fame players, all of that since 2011, and we're left in Vancouver just twiddling our thumbs because there's been nothing since. And so there's too many people that are hung up on that. I'd love to see the rivalry get renewed, but man, it's going to take more than a no hug between goaltenders at All-Star Weekend, I think, to fire it up. So I'm voting no on your poll question.
Okay, well, we'll see.
The fans were aggrieved.
Yeah, Boston fans were aggrieved.
Yeah.
Jacob Lauko quote tweeted one of them saying more hugs for us. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if anything transpires Thursday between these two teams. And of course, you'll be back doing rink whites between now and then against Carolina on Tuesday and against Boston on Thursday as the Canucks undertake this Eastern Conference trip, which is what, Jeff, a pretty good test, huh?
Yeah,
like we were talking tests. Yeah. I mean, this one is absolutely a test when you take a look at. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just don't know that people are paying day-to-day attention to Carolina, but like as good as the Canucks have been since Christmas, Carolina's got one more point than the Vancouver Canucks do since the Christmas break. So they've got the best power play in the National Hockey League since the Christmas break and actually before that. So, it's not a team that has game breakers, but they've got balanced scoring and they've got enough guys, obviously, and they've got the system there under Rod Brind'Amour. So great challenge for the Canucks, but like Vancouver, it's the first game for Carolina out of this break. We'll see if that has any impact. And then into Boston, and we'll watch the warm-up, and we'll see if Demko and Swayman are, eyeballing each other from opposite sides of center. But then the 2 quick weekend games, Detroit doesn't play until that game on Saturday. So maybe that's a break that the Wings are going to have to find their legs. And then they get Washington on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. Washington will have been in Boston on Saturday. So it's back-to-back for both the Canucks and the Capitals, and we'll see how that one plays out. But whatever the case, it's 4 games in really 5.5 days because of the 2 early starts. So tough opponents, difficult scheduling. Those weekend matinees always seem to test the Vancouver Canucks. So, look, there's going to be a ton of tests from here to the finish line, but that's what makes this so great for us and the business that we're in and the fans. Like, I hope people embrace this, that it feels like, 15 of the final 33 are going to be big time, games against really good opponents that I think we're going to learn a lot about this Vancouver Canuck team that, has been incredible to this point, to the All-Star break. These aren't the final exams, obviously. The final exams come in the playoffs, but these are sort of like stern midterms here out of the All-Star break against some really good opponents. So let's see if the Vancouver Canucks can keep that mojo going.
They faced the Bruins twice this month. They've got Sid and the Penguins. They've got Nathan McKinnon and the Avalanche coming up. They've got the Winnipeg Jets, which we have to remember that's a good team.
They haven't seen the Jets yet. They've got 3 left against Winnipeg. Yeah.
And midterms after reading week here, kind of inverse order. And then, hey, tomorrow, how about this? The way it sets up, I mean, this is just beautiful. You sit down, you watch the Canucks in Carolina, and then you get dessert. Oilers shooting for 17 in a row in Vegas against the defending Stanley Cup champions. Should be a fun night of hockey on Tuesday. Jeff, great stuff. Travel home safely. Look forward to catching up later this week.
All right, we'll see you soon, guys. Thanks.
Happy hour on Sekeres Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog's Chase My Tail Pale Ale.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.